I've been in Warsaw for a year now. Can you believe how fast time has flown? Warsaw is actually a lot more beautiful than people think. A lot of people from the outside cities say that Warsaw is ugly because it's just a bunch of like buildings and skyscrapers. I don't totally disagree because a lot of the buildings in the city center don't have color and they're very ugly. Where I live here in Praga, the buildings are actually quite colorful and a little bit more creative architecturally. The city itself is filled with so many beautiful parks, and the parks are big and they're very well maintained. They're clean. Like there's this part next to my house that I go to almost every single day because there's like a lake. I love being near water, and all 4 seasons, these parks are beautiful. So there's always like a little nature spot near your place that you can go to. Warsaw, believe it or not, is a city of outsiders. About 60% of people who live in Warsaw were born here. About 10% of them are Ukrainians, and 30% of them come from the smaller cities in Poland. So I think this idea of swojki culture is very interesting, and it applies to both men and women, although I've mainly heard it used to describe women. Swojki means jars, right? And it refers to people who go home for the weekends and bring jars of food from their hometowns back to the city. There's a lot of people like that who have this kind of transient nature with Warsaw, where they're here to study or they're here to work, but they're not fully like invested in the city. And I would say that that applies to a lot of foreigners as well, you know, especially the Ukrainians. Not so much the Ukrainians that have been here for like 8 to 10 years, but the ones who came recently for the war. A lot of the new ones refuse to integrate. They have this joke that, what's the biggest city in Ukraine? Warsaw. There are certain pockets like in Mokotów or in Wola that are predominantly run by Ukrainians, so you just hear Russian everywhere. So you have Western foreigners from maybe America or Western Europe. You have a lot of foreigners from Central Asia, so Kazakhstan, Uzbekistan, Belarus, Ukraine. You also have foreigners from Africa, India, Asia. You have a lot of people in the city that are trying to level up and achieve their ambitions. I highly recommend people coming to Warsaw during the summer, 2 or 3 months, so you guys can check it out. The city is incredible. So if you guys are interested in doing that, set up a strategy call here. We can walk through the steps of how you can move here, how to find an apartment, which neighborhood is best for you. Anything that you need to stay here, we'll go over in this strategy call. I have to say though that overall the quality of life here is excellent, especially if you have money. If you can find a way to make an outside income, whether it's euros or dollars, you can be living good here in Warsaw. For a capital city, the most expensive expense you have is rent, but groceries are still quite cheap. Public transportation is plentiful and also very cheap. And there are a lot of free things to do around the city. Like now we're in the summer, they have a bunch of events around the center that you can go to. I think Warsaw in the summer is one of the best cities in the world, especially right now that the days are so long. The sun fully sets at like 10 p.m. So you can be out the whole entire day and the weather is perfect. It's not too hot. I love that Poland is such a safe country. You see kids walking around everywhere on public transportation or in parks by themselves in a big city. The airport is not that far away. They have a lot of public transportation that takes you to the airport. Warsaw has a lot of direct connections to Asia, to US, all over the world. It's a nice little hub in Central Europe. The supermarkets are also within residential areas, so you can walk to the grocery store. You can always just go to the Żabka. Żabkas are plentiful. They're everywhere. I feel like Warsaw is a very lonely city though. In a big city, there's a lot of distractions. You have a lot of events that you can go to. There's a lot of things to see. There's a lot of really cool restaurants to try. Yet, it's very difficult to meet people and to build serious relationships. So in English, we have like friend, acquaintance, colleague, but we kind of say friend for everything. In Polish, they have like 3 levels of friends. You have znajomi, kolega, and then przyjaciel. Znajomi are acquaintances, so people that you meet at these events. And I would argue that in Warsaw, you can meet a lot of znajomi. Kolega are people that you usually will work with or people you see on a more common basis. And I would argue that I have a lot of kolegów in church. And then the last level is przyjaciół. And I think as a foreigner, it's almost impossible to get to this level unless you've studied here. I think one of the only places that I've been able to find real community actually is church. But it also depends on the church, right? The church that I go to is a smaller church. And I personally like that dynamic a lot more because you get to know the people that go to the church on a deeper level. It's like SCH. I go to Południe, which is the South Praga. The mother church is Północ. That one is like a much bigger church and they have like a full stage and everything. You just have to make a much bigger effort. And as you get older, making that effort becomes a lot harder. That's just the nature of life, right? They have this thing called pieski culture, and it's a combination of pies, which means dog, and dzieci, which means kids. And it refers to the people here who have their dogs who essentially act as their pseudo children, right? Poland already has the lowest birth rate in Europe, but I think here in Warsaw, you'll still see like kids hanging around, but it's not a large amount. If you go on a tram on like 1-2 p.m. on a weekday, there's old people everywhere. And that's why it reminds me a lot of like Japan and Korea, because they have a very similar problem. In general, raising kids in the big city is very difficult. It's very expensive. In my opinion, the best childhood is when you have a tight-knit family and you grow up in a smaller city where everybody knows each other. People tend to behave better. There's a sense of community. Those places are a lot safer as well. I think the adjustment period for me actually took about a year to get accustomed to the pace of life in Warsaw and to also find friends and to find community. The people here, to be honest, are very, very closed off. Polish culture already is very closed off. People kind of stay to themselves. And I know there's a lot of people, for example, like people that come from Armenia or Arab countries or Latino countries, they miss how warm the people are on the street. In Poland, it's so rare that you talk to like strangers on the street. If people are in groups, they don't really invite outsiders to their groups. They'll say that Polish people, like once you make a friend, you have a friend for life. And I think that's like kind of true, but a lot of Polish people, they have friends that they've been friends with since childhood or from university. So if you're an adult, trying to make like local friends is actually quite difficult. Warsaw is built around ambition, and this is very normal for capital cities all around the world, right? You always have this dynamic where in the big cities, people are more focused on like status games and money and career, whereas in the smaller cities, people like to live a more slow life and are a lot more focused on community. This is kind of the trade-off. I feel like it's very difficult to get both in one city. So Warsaw is unique because it has like all the superficialness of a place like Los Angeles with also all of the hustle and bustle of a business culture like a place like New York. Pretty much the only city in Poland where big things happen. If you want to get any form of media job or finance job, you have to come to Warsaw. It attracts a lot of entrepreneurs, working professionals, students, highly ambitious and motivated people. Everybody's always doing something. So if they're not working, they're at the gym. If they're not at the gym, they're at some party or event. If they're not doing that, they're on vacation. Like, a lot of people will say that it's very easy to date here, but I totally disagree. And my main argument is that in a big city in general, it's a lot easier to date a lot of people and meet people for short-term stuff. But I think it's actually quite difficult to find something serious and long-term. Culture of Warsaw does not make it conducive to building a solid relationship. So what do I mean by that? People are more anonymous because it's a big city. There's no real incentive for people to act correctly, right? And that goes for both men and women. If you want to ghost somebody, there's no real repercussions for it. If you're a foreigner here, you're here for a couple months, you can do whatever you want and then you just bounce, right? Whereas in a smaller city, if everybody knows who you are, people tend to behave a lot better because your movements are being watched and your reputation is important, right? And that's one of the downsides of church as well, and why a lot of people don't want to go to church. Because if you become known at a church, right, then all of a sudden there's like a social pressure to act a certain way. And I think a lot of people don't want that pressure. And on top of the fact that it's quite expensive to live here, everybody is always working, want to make time for your friends, so you have social events, and everybody here also goes to the gym because fitness is very important. When you have a packed schedule like that, how can you make room for a relationship? I also know some girls who moved from the smaller cities. There's like a very small window where if they're new to the city, if they don't get into a serious relationship, it's almost like the city breaks them. Warsaw is also a very competitive city. Oh my God, the women here are so hot. And I think because of that, other women also feel this pressure to conform and to maintain their appearance because there's just so much competition everywhere. If every other girl you see on the street is like extremely fit and has this perfect body, I imagine that makes women insecure. From the male's perspective, because there's so much money here and there's like success, there's a lot more pressure as the man where we have to compete financially or compete from status, right? So that's why there's a lot more status games in the center. And because Polish culture, they're quite envious of each other. There's always this idea of comparing yourself to the next person. I actually have not used dating apps, but talking to all my friends who have, the competition is very stiff because you have to understand that many men come to this country for the women. Slavic women are the most beautiful women in the world. There's also a lot of sugar daddy relationships here. I actually don't have any problems with that. A lot of people think it's weird. What two people choose to do in their own relationship is none of my effing business. Plus, because you're in a big city, you have this illusion of endless options. There's always going to be a hotter woman around the corner, but from a woman, there's always going to be a more successful guy or a richer guy or a better looking guy around the corner too. And because the people here are more ambitious, of course, they're going to try to find the best partner that they can. And I've noticed that in Warsaw, there seems to be a much higher level of divorce compared to the other cities in Poland. My studying of Polish culture is that a lot of people here get together when they're in uni or in high school and they stay together for a very long time. That's the normal way that you date, right? Like you go into a social group or gathering, you spend time with people as friends, and over a period of time, romantic feelings develop. When you're in uni or in high school, you get to hang out with people of the opposite sex without having to try. You're just around them, right? Whereas when you're an adult, you have to actually make an effort to go out and to meet people, and everything has to be planned, everything has to be scheduled. And that takes away a lot of the romance aspect of it, right? Like if you go on a date for the first time, there's a little bit of pressure for things to get sexual very quickly. Whereas when you're just friends with somebody and you're around them for like an extended period of time, you can more take your time and analyze how their personality is and what kind of person they are. An important nuance though is that if you're a foreigner and you speak Polish, your dating experience becomes so much better. I feel like you can't really know somebody until you speak to them in their native language. And even though the English levels here are quite good, when people speak Polish, their personalities change. I find myself using my Polish here way more than I did when I was in Krakow. Krakow is such a touristy city. When they saw me struggling, they would just swap to English. Whereas here, especially where I live here in Praga, most people don't actually speak English. I have to do everything in Polish. And that is actually something that I did purposefully. My Polish has improved so much since being in Warsaw. I purposely tried to live with locals. I started going to a Polish church. I play piano for a Polish church. All the songs are in Polish, the sermons in Polish. So I've really immersed myself into the culture and the language. Learning Polish changed my experience completely. For this last year, I've been pretty much studying Polish every single day, 2 to 4 hours. Now that my Polish is good enough, you should see the way that people treat me. Polish people are way more open and warm to me, for sure. Every time I go into like a store or a restaurant, girls hear me speak Polish, they all like do like a double take. They're like, no effing way. And it feels so good. I'm not gonna lie, there were so many times where I thought about leaving. I would say like most of the first year was rough. Because the winter was so rough, I started praying and I started going to church again. Church provided me with everything that I was looking for. After what happened with my ex-wife and the divorce, if you guys have seen the video, I recommend it. It's a very interesting story. I was very disillusioned by church and Christianity for a while, but I never really lost my faith. I've always found my way back to the church. And it's interesting because I didn't grow up Christian. It's something that I chose as an adult. I always had a very strong personal relationship with God. And when I started praying, I prayed to find a church, but I also prayed for an opportunity to play piano. I checked out a couple churches, but there's a church that's literally 5 minutes away from my house. At the first service that I went to, I met a guy who plays for the worship team there, and he invited me to play piano with them on Easter. And literally after that, they invited me to be a part of their concert, and so many things just happened so quickly. I'm very thankful for it because church gave me new meaning and purpose to my life again. It gave me that feeling of purpose and community that I was searching for so much here in Warsaw. So it depends on what phase you are in your life. If you're younger, especially in your 20s, Warsaw is an amazing place. There's so many things to do. I think it will push you to become a better version of yourself. But I think if you stay in the city too long, it can take away a lot from you. And I think this is more for women than it is for men. Because I think sometimes men need that kick in the butt from the big city to be like, oh, I need to get my stuff together and to work harder. But I think when women are pushed to work extremely hard, they have all this pressure from life and to pay all these bills, it kind of takes away from their femininity, right? But that's just my opinion. If you guys are thinking about moving to Warsaw, set up a strategy call here. We can walk through the steps of how you can move here, how to find an apartment, which neighborhood is best for you, what visa options or residency options that you have as well. Anything that you need to stay here, we'll go over in this strategy call.